You have to get to the line ready. You don't have to be at 100%. I mean, if everything goes great and you get there, perfect buildup, yeah, you'll be 100% ready to go. But the mistake you see a lot of people make is they don't make it to the start line, or they make it to the start line with, at 50%.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, whose lifetime highlights so far include meeting Brian from the Backstreet Boys, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 19 of the Running for Real podcast. I have a bit of a special one for you here because my birthday is just a few days away if you are listening to this on the Friday. If you're listening to this after the Friday, maybe you're listening on my birthday. But either way, I am celebrating with friends and family right now. Steve and I have just been to England to visit my friends and family, and I was in a wedding. So I have not had time to really think about work too much. So I wanted to get this episode to give you something a bit more of a personal one to my usual episodes. But before I begin about today, so last week I talked to Bonnie Kelly, who had her advice on kind of how to stop with the insecurities, how we always feel like we aren't good enough. And she helped us to find our belief in who we are again. It sounds a bit kind of woo, but actually really, really helpful advice. And if you haven't listened to that one, make sure you go back and check it out. This week, I have my husband, Steve, here with me, and I thought it would be good to chat about all things, he is a coach, so I'm obviously going to talk to him about some training stuff, and then kind of the transition for me and him, and now with me being pregnant, how he's kind of what his thoughts are on that. So this is going to be a fun episode. I want to thank you for all your support. And if you want to give me a little birthday present, you can go leave me a review on iTunes. That would be amazing, but no pressure. Okay, we will take a word from V, and then here we go. We will meet my husband. Technology has come a long way, and later in the show, you're going to get to meet one of the best advances for running I've ever seen, and you're going to love her. If you have to train on your own a lot, like I did, V will be just what you need. Check out getvi.com for more information. So, my dear, welcome to the Running for Real podcast. You've actually not been on this one, I don't think. You were on Run to the Top, but I don't think you've done this one. So welcome to my new podcast. You know all about it. Sometimes Steve listens to my episodes, but sometimes he doesn't, so I never know. But you are here today, so how are you feeling?
Pretty good. I have not been on this one, but yes, sometimes I do. Most of the time I know a lot about them before they even get released. Yep.
Usually here's the inside scoop, which is good. But you guys are getting the inside scoop today. But I will firstly say Steve is a lot more private than I am, whereas I will tell you guys absolutely everything. Steve is a lot more quiet. So just a heads up, you won't get the TMI stuff from Steve that you might get from me. But okay, let's talk about something that you're comfortable with. So firstly, I asked my Running for Real superstars, which anyone listening, if you are not in that group already, you can join, and we'll put a link in the show notes, or you can search on Facebook for, I think, Running for Real superstars, and it should come up. There's a picture of a shoe. But yeah, anyway, so I asked the group some questions, what they would like to know about you and from you. And one of the questions that I thought we could start with maybe is, one of the members said that there's a lot of negative stuff going on with like Division 1. And as a Division 1 coach who you used to be Division 2, now you're Division 1, do you see any real differences between the two? Is it more intense? Is there more, issues going on and things you kind of have to dance around?
At Moorhead State where I am, it's a very small Division 1 school, so it's not quite as, cutthroat and high pressure as some of the big schools, but one of the bigger differences is just there's, some of the rules are different. You have to have more athletes compete in more events. So there's a lot more emphasis on, some of that stuff. So like I said, that makes the job a little different. But yeah, there's definitely, like I said, it's a lot more intense. There's a lot more on the line as far as which, coaches' jobs. And, at certain schools, the athletes are, you either perform or you're done. So at Moorhead State, that's not the case. That's why I chose to be at a smaller school, is it's more about, developing the athletes, and student is still a big part of student athlete.
Yeah, and you've definitely found a good group with what you've got there at Moorhead State. because they do seem like they've got that balance right, and they care about their running, but it's not kind of as cutthroat as some of the other places are. So okay, well that's that one kind of out the way. And I know people are very interested when I mentioned that you had an engineering degree as to how that kind of went with such a different area. I mean, I know it really does, in my opinion, kind of go across to your coaching with the way that you think about training and see it as more of engineering with an engineering brain. But if you want to share just a little bit about how you ended up going from engineering to coaching, because they're rather different fields there.
I think as far as my general coaching, it just helps me, I think, have a different view on how to look at things rather than purely having the, biomechanical or exercise science, your typical coaching backgrounds. Mine's more of a different background, but it's helped me, I think, just add a different view on the way to look at things. And for me, like I said, I started off as an engineering position. I worked out of college for 5 or 6 years, and I was in the automotive industry. And then when that kind of started to really tank and hit the recession, it really, like I said, forced a lot of us, who weren't in the career for very long. We were starting to get laid off, and the jobs were disappearing. And I had 4 or 5 years experience, and I was going up against guys that had 20 years experience for the same entry level position. So I was kind of forced to go back to school, and I just kind of fell into coaching as a way to start working on a different degree. And I ended up never really going back to engineering, just kind of stayed in coaching.
Do you think, had the field not gone kind of south, do you think you still would have been in it, or do you think the coaching was kind of in the back of your mind somewhere?
No, I probably still would have been in it, honestly. If the recession hadn't hit and, like I said, everything was going south, I probably still would have stayed in it, because like I said, it was just where I was at. I had a comfortable position. I wasn't happy with it, so I was trying to move on. But like I said, if that hadn't happened, I probably never would have got into coaching.
Mm-hmm. So things happen for a reason, because that's where we met as well. So then I wanted to kind of discuss, so we have some training plans on the website, which we have put online. They've been pretty successful. Had quite a few people join, and we do have a Facebook group associated, so we can see how the people are getting on. And, this plan is kind of a bit different in that we've done it 100% effort-based, which, you're starting to actually see more and more of it. I know Steve Magnus is a huge fan of effort-based, and Steve Jones, who's going to be on the podcast next week, he's also obviously known for being effort-based. But what, in your opinion, makes effort-based training better than, focusing on a pace, especially for runners who are training for a marathon, half marathon, or somewhere around there?
Now, the number one thing for me is there's so many factors outside of your actual fitness level that affect how you run on a given day. For me, with college kids, have they had 2 exams? Have they just got out of 2 back-to-back 3-hour labs where they're on their feet? I mean, we have a lot of kids that are in, labs where they're actually, agricultural labs where they're doing things, or they're veterinary labs where they're out at the farm working. So what you've been doing throughout the day can make such a difference to it. And if you just purely look at a chart that says, okay, I'm a 3-hour marathoner, I need to run this pace, you're not taking into consideration all those other factors. And that doesn't even include weather, wind, conditions of where you're working out. Is it hilly? Is it flat? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's just a better way, especially when you're coaching somebody from a distance, which our plans are set up for people to use anywhere, to go purely effort-based. So that way you're kind of controlling your own effort rather than locking into forcing yourself to run a pace that might be too hard just because of conditions or the terrain you're on.
And did you have to learn that over time, like about that people need that? Or was it something that it kind of seemed almost like common sense to you?
I think it's just something that kind of learned over time. Like for me, with my background, it was more, beginning, I started out focusing on the numbers and not really realizing. And then it just kind of, after a while, you start to kind of learn through time that, people actually run better, when they're able to just focus on giving effort rather than focus on a number all the time. So it's something to kind of learn over time. And then I think as race distances go up, it becomes more and more about effort than it does about trying to hit a certain pace. I mean, obviously we all have our goal paces and, times you want to run, but your body's going to work better. It's going to be, operate smoother. You're going to be looser and more relaxed, which is going to lead to better times, more efficiency. If you're just worrying about running, not worrying about obsessing over a certain pace or time.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the fact that I was so consistent when I didn't look at my watch, did that have any impact on, with this training plan? I know with your college athletes, you still kind of have to train them as teenagers how to pace themselves. But do you think the fact that I was so attuned to effort-based but didn't really handle paces very well, that like made it, solidified it more, or did I not really have an impact in that?
I think everyone's different. I think as far as you, it was just something over time you're able to get very, very consistent with it. I mean, I remember times starting out that you were not very good at it. Like I said, it just takes time, but I think each person's going to adapt to it differently. I think people like yourself who can just go all in and just trust that it'll work. It works very well, and they're able to, really do well with it. And I think it's, once somebody can buy in, whether there's someone that's good at it from the beginning or not, I think they'll eventually get to the point where they see the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it teaches you to just, trust your body. And like I said, there's very few things in running that are, out of your control. And it's good to just focus on what you can control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is a tough lesson for us all to learn. And, I know people are curious about the plan itself. You look at things differently in that you pick specific workouts for specific points. And I know quite a few of the group who have purchased the plan have been always used to it being like tempo Tuesday, speed work Friday. And it's the same thing every week. Things might change, whereas you seem to be very, I don't know, the plan is very well thought out. Like, okay, this specific workout needs to be here. What is the purpose of that in your opinion, rather than just having a day dedicated to certain things?
Just with marathon training or half marathon training, there's just certain things you want to hit, and everything's kind of phased. So there's, for me, in my opinion, so each part of the training, if you want to break it up into thirds, has a different focus on it. So like I said, that's where that comes from. And like I said, I'm someone who believes that you shouldn't just do the same workouts all the time. You need to vary it up. You need to change the stress on your body just so you can, like I said, hopefully make bigger gains. And you can get stuck in a rut really easily in running and just do the same thing over and over again and expect this, results to keep getting better. And I think you need to keep your body guessing. You need to constantly be changing it. As long as the focus of what you're training for never really changes, you can change the specifics of the workout, get the same overall benefit, but at the same time, you're kind of tweaking it just a little bit so your body continues to adapt and evolve. And, the plan with our system was just to say, hey, this is a program that anyone can use, whether you're a 2-hour and 40-minute marathoner or a 4-hour marathoner, it doesn't matter. It's just learning how to run at the effort levels we want. And that takes time. And I think people will realize that in our plan that we want quality workouts. So it's maybe not as many or as high intensity as people think, but once you actually get into them, the ones we have you doing, should be a very high quality day for you.
Mm-hmm. And so speaking of that, I know that is something that a few people have commented on, is that there seems to be, like initially when they look at the plan, it seems like there's a lot less hard days than there are in other plans that they've done. But like you said, it's more about quality. So why is it important, like in a marathon segment, you may have a few weeks in a row where you only have one workout a week? Like what's the reason for that?
Just like I said, a couple things. Like I said, the number one thing is, one of the biggest mistakes people make when training for a marathon is they go too hard too early or too hard too long. You have to get to the line ready. You don't have to be at 100%. I mean, if everything goes great and you get there, perfect buildup, you'll be 100% ready to go. But the mistake you see a lot of people make is they don't make it to the start line, or they make it to the start line with, at 50% because they've had to adjust so much. Maybe they burned out early. So the plan was just to, if you're going to do, have quality days, just make sure they're real quality. But like I said, that's the other side of it. If you're only going to have, a long run and one workout in a week, you got to make sure your long run and your workout are really high quality.
Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily making every long run hard. It might have a different purpose. It might just be a really long time on your feet one, which we found quite effective for me. So just one more thing about the plan, I will say for anyone listening, if you are interested, I will put links in the show notes. We have marathon, half marathon, and just released 5K, 10K training plans. If you do want to check those out, I will put a link in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. So then a lot of other coaches tend to read about what other coaches are doing and pull pieces together and make a plan, kind of a mismatch, their own like blend, I guess, of other coaches' ideas. But you seem like you've, although the base concepts are the same, that you've come up with your own creation, I guess, here. Like, what are your thoughts on, how you've come up with that, and have any other coaches kind of had an influence and you've taken things from them and kind of found what they've said helpful?
A little bit. Like I said, a lot of what, like I said, as a collegiate coach, we go to the United States Track and Field Coaches Association meetings, conventions as often as I can, and I'll listen to some speakers there. So I've picked up a few things there, but a lot of it, I said, when I first started out, I was reading every book I could get my hands on, and everybody loves to throw the names out of, Lydiard, Daniels, all these other training systems. And I read all those. And what I learned more than anything was just through trial and error with my own athletes and with myself is you've got to, hit certain systems and have certain parts. But like I said, the foundation of all those systems is similar. Mm-hmm. If you can cut through all the details and get down to one of my teachers used to get down to the brass tacks and get down to what's really in the program. It's very similar. It's just laid out different ways and there's different terms, and you can really get yourself confused and get yourself kind of in a spiral of, looking at all these different plans. And, I decided I was just going to stick to the basics, pull out the basics and really just kind of focus on those. And it's just kind of developed over time. And I'd say one of the biggest thing I've learned in my college setting is you can't expect to have the same type of workouts work for every kid and every school. If you're in a school and one part of the country, you move to a different part. Like, so when we moved from Michigan down to Kentucky, there's certain things I have in Kentucky that I didn't have in Michigan and vice versa. There's things that...
Like a road that's not covered in snow. Yeah,
that was a big help. But like I said, the other part of it is, in Michigan, there's tons and tons of, areas to train. So there are positives there. So there's things I used to do in Michigan that I can't do here, but there's things that I do here that I couldn't do in Michigan. So it's just... You have to learn to adapt to your environment. And that's why our training plan that we put together for Running for Real was all effort based, because it needs to be able to be used in all different parts of the country and the world. Mm-hmm. So we tried to set it up that way. And I think it just went hand in hand with what we found was the biggest success, not only for you, but other people I've coached, is when you just focus on your effort and focus on what you're doing as far as the run and running properly and not really worrying about anything other than what you're doing at the time and not focusing on a pace. The workouts went better. Your body was smoother. It moved better. So like I said, that it just kind of went hand in hand, and that's why we threw it together as a effort based. And like I said, I think the programs, like I said, people will be a little bit hesitant at first, but once they get through them and kind of understand what we want as far as the effort based scale, I think it'll really help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been kind of cool for me to watch. I mean, I know I've been reading things to you, but it's been cool for me to see how people have progressed. That first week, the first 2 weeks, they're very nervous. They're like, oh, I don't think I did this right. And then, the ones who are further along are like, oh, just give it a few weeks, you'll get it. And it's kind of like you have to really focus on it for a few weeks and then it like clicks. So if you are in that early part, don't panic, give it time. You will get a handle on it, and it will come together for you. All right, so one other question that wasn't actually in the group, but I noticed someone asking about this, and we get asked about this all the time, which is, so if someone says, I really want to improve my speed. I want to improve my speed so I can run a faster 5K. But at the end of the day, it's not really actually their speed, quote unquote, that is holding them back. It's essentially their endurance or the strength. So maybe you could explain what that means and why when people say, I want to run some speed workouts because I need to run faster, why that's not necessarily what they need.
I wish I could think of the book off the top of my head, but there's a chart, and I think it's in a Daniels book, that shows, according to him, everything from the 800 meters up. So 800 meter race is considered 50% aerobic, 50% anaerobic, or what most people consider speed. Mm-hmm. So as the distances increases, that percentage becomes more and more aerobic based. So when people tell me I need to get faster, I need to do more speed. Yeah, that's part of the training philosophy. But the other part is you need to build your aerobic capacity first. Mm-hmm. And that's how you can develop speed out. I mean, countless athletes I've worked with in the college setting, I need to get more speed. I'm only a 540 miler out of high school. And, I tell them, like, we can take 20 seconds off of that mile time without doing much speed. It's just all going to be aerobic strength. So your body gets stronger, it gets more efficient. That's how you need to do it. So if you just can continue to focus on building that aerobic capacity first, your body will naturally become more efficient. You'll get stronger. So the speed that you think you don't have, you can actually develop it through strength. You still need to do the speed stuff, but I think most people don't realize that you can actually get faster at shorter distances by building more aerobic power.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say about building aerobic, are you talking about easy runs? Like what kind of things?
No, you're talking about, to simplify it, it's, harder long runs, tempo runs, hill workouts, increasing your mileage, in a safe way with your mileage. You want to keep those easy runs, but those are all, like I said, those are big things that can help increase your aerobic power. Is that, those strength type workouts. For me, I love tempo runs, hill workouts. We have things in our program that are progressive type long runs where you're running hard, but not so hard that you can't run a long distance. So like I said, it's those type of workouts that help build that strength, which most people have trouble making the connection, like, oh, that's not going to make me any faster in my 5K. Well, yeah, it is. It's just going to be doing it a little bit different way than going out on the track and doing a bunch of 400s and 200s.
So even someone who's, let's say their race is 3 months away, they should still, and they're doing a 5K, they still need the tempo runs, like 4, 5, 6 mile tempo runs, despite the fact that they are only racing a 5K. Like you can't
definitely. Yeah, okay. You have to do over distance training. And like I said, all that stuff, like I said, I mean, you can read anybody's training log and all that stuff, but I think the basis people need to realize that is most everything we race as distance runners is aerobic based. So you have to work on that first.
Okay. So something funny, just because I think people would be interested to hear. When I was in college in Michigan, because it was so snowy so much of the time, we couldn't get outside. We couldn't really train outside as much as we wanted. So we would race, the 800, the mile. And I was a 10K, 5K, 10K runner, but I would do the 800, race the mile, do that, as a double in one day, and kind of say maybe your philosophy on that for someone maybe that they are in the cold, or they are in, it's too hot to train outside. Give some examples of how, those shorter races, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I didn't ask you about it then, how that can actually help you by racing or like being creative and finding ways to develop speed for later.
Well, I mean, first I'll correct you that in Michigan, we did run outside every day.
Yeah. I should say.
But like I said, any of the kids that ran for me at Ferris understand that there was very, very little times where we didn't go outside to run. What we didn't do is do workouts out there if conditions were bad. And that's exactly what you're talking about, how we got into, we used a lot of our races as workouts. So I knew I could get maybe one day somewhere during our week that we'd be able to get a decent enough weather outside. We could get something in. So obviously for us, like I said, we can't just have one day a week that's moderate. We needed another day. So we would use some of our races on the weekends, and luckily we had indoor track season. So indoor became a lot of workouts for us. So, other coaches to this day still laugh at some of the stuff I did to make it work, but you got to understand the situation you're in and how to maximize it. Just like I said earlier, you got to adjust and everything. And that was one adjustment we made was, you looked at our schedule and people were like, wow, you guys are racing every weekend. Well, yeah, but we're not actually racing. We're using some of these races as workouts. So we'd have kids run the 3,000, or run the mile, run the 3,000, and run the 4x4, or they'd run the mile, the 800, and then they might pace some of their teammates in the 3K. So it was another workout for us where we knew the weather was going to be good because it was inside. We knew we were going to be able to run fast because it was on a track. So it's just adapting to that and how that would work for somebody who's training for road races or things like that. Is, you're in the winter, say you're up somewhere on the East Coast, it's, you're going to have trouble getting a decent workout in. So, all right, well, I know I can get at least something in on a treadmill. So you can modify some treadmill workouts, or you can, all right, I can sign up for these road race series, which hopefully at that point they have some at least decent footing. So every, if that's a four races in 6 weeks, okay, those weeks, I just need to get something in, during that week. So it's just understanding that you can use some of those races as kind of workouts. Obviously in a perfect world, you're not racing until you're fit and ready, and maybe do one or two little rust busters. But, the biggest thing is, you've got to adapt to where you are. And like I said, that's where that came from, is we knew we were lucky to get one good day during the week. So
would you like to tell a story, or do you want me to, about me in the mile when the coach at Grand Valley told all of his team that what I was going to do, the plan?
Oh,
because it's quite a funny story. I think people.
Well, for us at Ferris, we never really did anything fast indoors in the indoor season, just because we didn't have anywhere to do it. So I'd been there a while, and like I said, I had a great relationship with Coach Baltus and Coach Polka at the time, and it was just funny because they knew our plan to a T in the mile was we knew we couldn't outkick anybody. So we got to the halfway point and we just took off. So it was just funny because they knew exactly what we were going to do. They knew it was coming and everything, but it was just funny because, like I said, he and I will still laugh about it to this day. Some of the things I used to have my kids do, and we just knew each other so well. And like I said, that was different for them. They had the ability to work out on that track all the time. So, it's just like any race. You got to find your strength and play on it, and not let what somebody else is going to do, dictate what you're going to do. So, we just stuck to our guns with you and anybody else that we knew how we had to race the mile, and that's what we did.
Yep. And I specifically remember one day I was standing right near the start line, and he was in a jokey way kind of telling his team, this is exactly what she's going to do, and like pointing at me and kind of laughing a little bit. And I said, yep, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And it's still around 800 meters. I pulled ahead and managed to hold him off until the end. So it was kind of funny. And yeah, I mean, like Steve said, we had to be creative, but I think it made us tougher and made us smarter racers. So it was a good thing. All right, so that's enough of the serious stuff. Let's kind of talk about more of the current. So firstly, people were interested. I can't remember when I first told you that I had amenorrhea. Do you remember anything about that?
I don't remember a specific date or time, but I know, like I said, it's as a coach, it's something you always have that conversation with female athletes because it's such an important part of it. But it's also something that a lot of coaches don't want to talk about or don't want to hear about. It's just something that needs to be brought up. So like I said, it's one of those things I think where it's just considered such a taboo topic that nobody wants to discuss. Well, I think as a coach, if there's so many things that can contribute to it, it's got to be a discussion you have with your athletes.
Yep.
But I can't remember a specific time when we talked about it.
No, for as long as I can remember, you just knew, but I don't really.
Yeah, and we were always working with doctors and trying to figure it out the best we could. But
yeah. So then fast forward to, I don't know, I guess around a year ago, as I specifically remember the day kind of things shifted in my mind, not consciously, but just I became more aware of it, was when we were in Amsterdam and I found out my sister was pregnant. Although that didn't make me be like, I don't want to run anymore. I think it made me think, well, this little baby is more important to me than, my running. And so, we've kind of discussed this about what you kind of realized. So maybe, I know people are curious, like what your version of this was. What changes did you notice in me over the course of the last year that made you think, well, something's changed here. Maybe this is time for her to step away. And I know we set a deadline, so maybe.
I think part of it was, the biggest change I saw was you're more and more focused on trying to figure it out, what's going on with my body, rather than just being a elite athlete that where you're at and where you're trying to get to. You don't have time for anything other than just focusing on what you're doing. But like I said, I think the biggest change was you just started to definitely spend more time researching it and trying to figure it out. And like I said, it's hard for me to really say if there's any major things I noticed. But like I said, the biggest thing I just noticed is that there was definitely, I would even say, going into your last marathon at CIM, you weren't 100% focused like you'd been in the past, and not in a bad way, in a good way. You were just realizing there was other things that we needed to get to in our life that were beginning to come up against that deadline we had set. So I think it was just, like I said, I think it started to creep in your mind when your sister got pregnant, and then that seed got planted and just kind of continued to grow. And then, like I said, over time, I just saw, like I said, a little bit less concern for what we were doing as far as running. Like I said, still dedicated, but still just like a little bit backed off.
And maybe you could share what you said about the competitive switch, because I think that's kind of interesting. You said you kind of noticed towards the end that I could switch off my competitiveness, or kind of in a way that I'd never been able to before. I think because I was always someone who could absolutely go eyeballs out and give it everything I had. And I kind of feel like that last year I was able to kind of reach a level where I was pushing hard, but maybe not quite as hard as I did in the past.
I think you were just more aware of where that limit was. But like I said, I think definitely you got to the point where you were less competitive on a daily basis. I mean, you're always going to be someone that you'll catch a guy out on a run and he keeps surging. It's always going to make you mad. But I felt like the last year you began to give up some of that stuff as you began to think about more what was important. But I think the biggest thing that I saw was just you were just starting to be more concerned with it. And to be honest, more worried about what we were going to have to go through once we did decide to stop running.
Yep. And then when I did tell you I was going to stop, was there any part of you that was a little bit sad, or were you kind of like, I know the answer obviously, but anyone listening, like,
I would say a little bit. because I felt like if we could have kept going a little bit longer, we were right on the cusp of a big breakthrough. We'd been consistent for a couple of years, but I'd say most of me no, because I knew it was coming. And you could just see the writing on the wall. But the other part of it for me was, as your coach and husband, it had to be your decision to step away. Mm-hmm. Couldn't be my decision to keep you to run, and couldn't be my decision to tell you to stop. Obviously, we had set that deadline, and that was more of a...
Which was 2018 after the Commonwealth Games that we kind of said was the...
Yeah, so I mean, we had said that, but I knew it had to be your decision to walk away, to take a break. And like I said, I just tried to support you in any way and do the best I could. But like I said, those last few months, I could kind of tell it was coming. I just needed to let you get there on your own.
Mm-hmm. And I remember when I got back here, because I'd been in England with my new niece, Charlotte, and I asked you to go on a walk to kind of discuss it. And do you remember I was like prodding you, trying to give me an answer, and you were like, I'm not answering this for you, Tina. This has to be your decision. And I was getting mad at you because you weren't giving me an answer, but it was obviously the right thing to do because, like you said, it did have to be my decision. And I'm so glad you did make my own decision. But at the time, I remember being like, Steve, you're supposed to help me decide. And you just weren't having it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you want to help and you want to give your input, but it was such a big thing that it was your career as an elite athlete that was going to be stopped. And it had to be your decision to walk away. And I still think to this day, at some point, you're going to start training and try and make a comeback. But right now, there's other things. There's the, running for real group you started. There's, the pregnancy and everything. So like I said, there's more important things in our life than anybody's life than just running fast times. But for us, like I said, I don't think you're done. I think it's just a temporary break. But I think at some point, you'll get the itch again and our lives will line up to where you can train again at that high level.
Mm-hmm. And then what about during that time when I wasn't running? Did you see any major mood changes? Because I feel like I handled it, I don't know, better than I should have, essentially, for something that had been so ingrained in my life for such a long time.
I see it. I mean, I see it a little bit. You handled it pretty well. You're able to relax. And I think part of it was just because you knew deep down inside that's what you had to do to get your body to function again, was you had to let go. And I think that was the biggest to me, is I just had to see you more relaxed and more, letting things go, which was against your personality. But at the same time, you knew that's what you had to do after talking to all the doctors and experts we'd talked to, is you had to do that. So I just saw you, a little bit more relaxed. And there was times when I definitely felt like you were frustrated and not happy with what we were having to go through. But like I said, I think the biggest thing is I just saw you finally relax a little bit and kind of de-stress.
Mm-hmm. And you enjoyed the part with all the extra ice cream and going out and getting lots of
yeah, that was a tough sacrifice to make.
Although we'll bounce back to that properly in a minute. But as we're on the topic of ice cream, everyone knows I love ice cream, and they were kind of asking about the fact that I do love ice cream, but I've said that recently my sweet tooth seems to be missing. Don't know where it's gone, but I haven't really had any desire for ice cream. So how's that been for you? Kind of, suddenly, Steve will get, the other day, he got 2 ice creams out and he said, which one do you want? And I said, I don't want either. I mean, is that a bit weird for you, having known me all this time as a sweetaholic, sugaraholic?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's you read the things about pregnancy, and I think it's normal. So it wasn't anything I didn't expect. But yeah, it's just funny.
You're the one. Can we go out for ice cream?
You don't expect someone that wants sugar, wants sweets and enjoys their sweets all the time to all of a sudden be, wanting salty and savory stuff. Like I said, I think you almost expect something to happen, whether it's that or, you hear people, I want pickles and peanut butter and all this weird stuff. So I tried to keep an open mind going into it. But like I said, I didn't expect it to be, 180 from before.
What would you say is the weirdest thing I've asked for? I haven't really asked you for
nothing really weird. You just seem to be more into salty stuff.
Yeah, Marmite, for those of you who know what that is, and I'm not talking about Vegemite, I'm talking about Marmite. That has been my favourite thing recently. I do have a confession to make. I did buy corn dogs. I admitted it to Steve as soon as he walked in the door. I haven't eaten one yet, but I'm kind of embarrassed that I bought corn dogs. So we'll see if those eventually get eaten. So just one more thing about the amenorrhea. Has this kind of changed the way that you're going to approach your female athletes in the future? Do you think you're going to do anything different with them? Because college athletes are obviously very susceptible to stuff like this?
Maybe a little bit, maybe just trying to provide a little bit more education on it. Unfortunately, in our system, a lot of that stuff is not out of my control as far as the medical approach to it is all controlled. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I think more than anything, it's just maybe trying to provide the resources for the girls to read and to look into things. And obviously having you as a resource is tremendously helpful to them. Mm-hmm. But I think that the biggest thing is just, like I said, communication with them. And maybe the one thing I will do more of is try and give them a little bit more access to things that could help answer some of their questions. Because it is a hard thing for them to come talk to me about. So it's, just one of those things you have to keep prodding them a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That's good. And then, what about, now I'm pregnant, I'm kind of running, 3 to 4 times a week, 5 miles, complete role reversal, even in that side of things with, now when I run with Steve, I'll run with him for a few miles, but, I make him run 9.5 minute pace. So that just feels uncomfortable for him. So it goes ahead. Is it like strange being like the one leaving me behind and kind of going off on your own, or is it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't view you. I mean, right now you're just someone who's running for fitness and for health and because you enjoy it. So right now I don't view you as Tina, the athlete. You're just Tina, my wife,
the pregnant lady
trying to be healthy. So it's a little different, but I know deep in my, in the back of my mind that, at any point, if you wanted to actually push your heart rate up to a zone, that you would have no problem leaving me in the dust like usual. But there's more, like I said, you're doing more important things right now. Mm-hmm. So it's good. Like I said, I'm really, proud of the way you've stepped out and just, all right, I'm just going to run just a few days a week just so I can run a little bit. There's no emphasis on, I got to train as much as I can during this pregnancy so I can come back faster. No, it's, we have to do what's right for the health of the baby.
Mm-hmm. And, it's been good coming back so far, although I definitely understand what people mean when they say about it just being hard. Like, I definitely took advantage of when I was training hard. Like, on easy days, I was still like exhausted, my legs hurt and stuff, but it's like a whole different version. So it's been kind of a good lesson, good learning curve for me. And how have you felt any different, us going just to essentially you being my husband rather than, me being, us having to put my running first and then, trying to keep that balance between husband and coach?
A little bit. I mean, I try to keep those so separate for me. It's been more just kind of the coach side of it's just kind of been transferred now onto writing the plans for the Running for Real and kind of helping you with that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's been a little bit different and just trying to kind of put that coach side away. Mm-hmm. Just like I said, is I have so much going on with everything else that it actually is just giving me a little bit more time to focus on other things. But no, like I said, it's been an adjustment, but like I said, in the back of my mind, I just tried to keep those so separate as much as I could.
Mm-hmm. And just before we go on, any more thoughts on the pregnancy? Have you noticed any weird things that I've been doing? Maybe.
No, I mean, I think right now we're so early on. I think the biggest thing is just the tiredness and, you're just tired all the time and the nausea and stuff. So it's hard to really say because I think those two things draw most of my attention anyway, as far as what's changed with you. So, the biggest thing is just trying to be supportive, and it's hard because there's not really much I can do.
Mm-hmm. And just for, we mentioned about we would like to think someday I'll make a comeback. I mean, I think this is just as much a question for me as it is for you, but like changes we would make. I mean, I think I would need to keep not get anywhere near the kind of weight I was before, even though that wasn't that thin, I think it was too thin for my body. So I think me personally, I would make sure I was eating more than I was before so that I could keep my weight. I don't mind saying I'm about 130 right now and I'm 5'5", and I was about 110 to 115 most of the year before, but I think I would try and keep myself around 120. But that's the weight side of things. Is there anything you think you would change?
Well, even on that, I always say don't think about it. Just fuel your body to the level it needs to be fueled and not be obsessed with stepping on a scale. Just like we've told people to put the watch away, put the scale away.
Yeah, I don't know where ours is. Actually, I do. It's in the garage.
Somewhere, but I don't remember. I moved it, so I don't know where it is now. The battery's dead in it, so it doesn't matter. But no, like I said, from that side of it, I agree. I think sometimes you got to make sure when your intensity comes up that you match it with your calorie intake goes up too. But like I said, I think Other changes would be just like I said, we always have talked about maybe, slightly adjusting some of your stride and those kind of little things. But no, I think the main thing is just continue to do what worked right for you. And the other side of it is, if and when you do decide to begin training again, is being patient and understanding that it's going to take time, and it's not just going to snap back to it. It's going to be, your body's going to need, a good chunk of time to just build that strength back up. So it'll just be patient with it and understanding that it's going to be a process.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to take a moment to thank our sponsor, and then I will be giving you the Running for Real 4 questions, which I don't know if you know what they are, but you're going to have to do them on the fly. Catching up with friends on a run is one of the best feelings a runner can experience. The miles fly by, you feel good, and it just becomes so much easier to keep going. They push you to be better, and you push them to be better. But for most of us, those runs are few and far between. So how do you stay motivated when it's just you and your thoughts? Wouldn't it be nice to have someone alongside you, pushing you when you need it most? Well, running on your own can be tough to stay motivated, and I'm excited to introduce to you a new friend of mine, someone I know you're going to love, V. V is the coach in your ear, and she doesn't talk all stiff like a robot, but she talks like a real person. She'll give you advice, let you know how you're doing, and actually talk to you like a friend would, in an encouraging way, but still pushing you to do your best, not letting you off the hook when the going gets tough. But she also knows everything about you, so won't let you overtrain yourself either, which I know many of us are guilty of. You can find out more and enter to win your very own V at getv.com/runningforreal. That's getvi.com/runningforreal. All right, just the Running for Real 4 left for you, my dear husband. Starting with a unique nutrition tip. Anything you would... I know I'm the one that's a bit obsessed with nutrition in this household, but...
I would say almost kind of what we were talking about before is don't obsess over the scale. I mean, that's not a nutritional tip, but just put it away and just fuel your body the way, if you're hungry, eat. I would say, the other thing is you don't eat pasta as much as you think you do.
Yeah, you've definitely learned that over the years. And
yeah. I mean,
I used to do it as well.
It's such a, ingrained, I'm a runner, I got to go have pasta every night. Well, no, you don't. You don't need pasta as much as you think you do. So
yeah, I remember when I was in college, we would go to Olive Garden, and you still do that with your teams.
Yeah,
and we'd eat so much pasta that in your hotel room, you'd be like,
And that's, I think people just overdo it. But that's just a culture thing.
Okay, all right, great. That is helpful. What about a Running for Real moment?
The funniest one I can think of is I was running in Michigan when I was in college in the winter, and I'm just running through the town I grew up in, Brighton, Michigan, and I'm just running down like the main street. And this older guy, he's probably in his 70s or 80s, like literally pulls his car over on the side of the road, and he stops me. He's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He's like, why are you running? Are you crazy?" And it was like -10, snowing and windy. It was nasty. My beard was covered in ice, and he literally stopped me. Like, he pulled his car in front of the road. I couldn't go across the road without stopping. And he just was concerned that I was having some kind of a breakdown or something. But I thought it was funny, because for me, it was just, I was in college. It was like, that was my junior, senior year. I was like, I had to go out and get my run in. My coach gave me my schedule. I had to get my run in that day, and I didn't care. But it was just funny for me, because anyone who's a runner who really gets into it, that those are the moments that you don't want to go out the door. But the rest of that run, I remember thinking, well, he's probably right. Most people I'm going to race against probably wouldn't even be out here right now.
Exactly. We've had that quite a lot here as well with, people in the local area, our friends, because we're in Kentucky and it doesn't get that snowy and cold. Because we've spent time, Steve's from Michigan. I've spent a lot of time in Michigan. If it's snowing outside, we're going to go out. I think we've maybe a few times gone inside, but for the most part, we're going to just find a loop, even if it means running around parking lots. And people here are like, "Wait, you ran outside?" And they can't wrap their brain around it. So I think we have quite a lot of those right now, because people just can't understand why runners would possibly go outside in the cold. So, all right. What about a high moment, either in your personal running or your coaching career?
I'll do one of each. So, for me, running, it's kind of a funny one. Not funny, but I had a pretty bad injury my senior year of college, and I hurt my calf, had to have surgery. And the high moment for me was when I got to actually come back, and, finally took over a year to where I could actually start running again. And then another year until I was actually running at a decent level again. So it's probably being able to finally go out and run.
Was that the compartment syndrome?
Yeah, I had compartment syndrome in my calf. It was misdiagnosed in college. I went another probably 6 to 9 months after I was out of college trying to figure it out. I'll just take a few weeks off or try this physical therapy, and nothing seemed to work. And then finally, I actually went to U of M Med Sport in Ann Arbor, and they figured out they did all the tests, and they're like, oh yeah, this is pretty bad. But anyway, yeah, just finally being able to go out and run a decent road race. I can't even remember what race I did, but it was just like, I actually felt like myself again. So that was one of those moments where I thought that was done. I thought I knew I'd be able to run again, but I never thought I'd be able to run at a high level.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good one. And speaking of compartment syndrome, make sure if you do think that could be something that's going on with you, if you've got what were some of the symptoms? Numbness in your legs, in your feet. What else did you have?
It's like a numbness and tingling and the loss of control.
Okay.
Mine was it's called foot drop, is where I wouldn't be able to control my foot plantar and dorsiflecting, so my foot would just kind of slap on the ground.
Okay.
There wasn't any actual pain, I've had injuries where you hurt you pull a muscle or something. It was just purely just a really weird sensation is what I can describe it as. But it's a very nasty injury, and it's one of those that doesn't heal without treatment. Okay.
So if that does sound familiar, make sure you go listen to the episode with Dr. David Geyer, which is episode 15. That one is going to he talked about compartment syndrome, so make sure you check that out. But you said you had a coaching moment?
Yeah, like I said, right now, I'd say going back, it would be the first year I qualified the men and women for the national championships in Division II. Mm-hmm. Not because, like I said, we were amazing teams, and we were great teams, but no one thought it was possible at a school with, the men had very little resources, almost hardly any scholarships. So it was, and we did basically the impossible, and that's to get both teams there that year was an amazing thing. And it's something I'll never forget. Obviously currently at Moorhead right now, we're really building something. So hopefully we have another one of those moments here soon.
Oh, well, I guess stay tuned, everyone listening. All right. And then what did you used to tell yourself when you were on the start line?
I used to tell myself to relax, and just to kind of trust. I would always have, something in my head to say, or not to date myself, but we didn't have iPods or any of that stuff when I was racing. So you didn't really have the song to get you in the moment. So I would always have things I would say to myself. But the last thing I would say before the gun would go off to myself would just be relax. Okay. And just try and run smooth.
Okay, good. And so usually I ask my guests for a power pose, but I have a feeling that you are not too keen on that idea.
I'll have my team do a power pose.
So yeah, Steve is a little bit shy when it comes to stuff like that. So, okay, yeah, they will absolutely love that. And I bet that photo is going to be hilarious, but they are going to love it. Well, I guess we're going to get on with our day now. I want to thank you for doing this, Steve. I know, you're not exactly like I mentioned at the beginning, you're not as comfortable kind of being honest and open and kind of sharing everything about everything you're thinking as I am. But I know people love hearing from you and kind of learning from you. So thank you for sharing. This has been great to learn from and kind of interesting for me to hear little things I haven't heard before.
Well, hopefully people look into those plans that we came up with, or if they're looking for a way to kind of change things up, or just, like I said, if they're in a rut and they need a way out, I think this training program is perfect for people that want to change things up and kind of get out of their routine. But like I said, I think it'll work for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right, guys, you can find everything we talked about today in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 19. Next week, as I did mention earlier in the podcast, we have Steve Jones. Yes, the legendary Steve Jones on the podcast. And he is also a running by effort kind of guy, but he is, let's just say, very real, does not have anything to hold back, and will just share exactly how it is. He also tells a story that he's never told before, which is really interesting, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So make sure you check that one out next week. I want to thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this one. And remember, if you want to give me a little birthday present, make sure you go to iTunes and leave a rating and review. I would really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much in advance. All right. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we will talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.